So, the last time we talked about this player on the YouTube channel was a video talking about him and the Montreal Canadiens, because there was some idea floating around that the Habs would actually be interested in this Vancouver Canucks goaltending prospect. But today we're talking about this player once again, and focusing on the Vancouver Canucks' treatment of this guy, and how, in the eyes of his agent, the Canucks might have just dropped the ball in this situation. Today we're talking about Michael DiPietro, a 2017 drafted third-round guy by the Vancouver Canucks, who, after developing in the Abbotsford Canucks and Utica Comets systems the past few years, is now on the trade block. Before we give the little scoop as to what's going on, let's just briefly go over the profile here. DiPietro, 23 years old, 6 feet 201, drafted in 2017. He's making $800,000 for one more season, and ever since making his debut as a pro in the Vancouver Canucks system in 2018-19, he came in relief in one game against the Sharks. He got absolutely lit up, 7 goals against, a .708 save percentage, and it was absolutely terrible. He eventually became a mainstay Utica Comets guy. And to be fair, he wasn't bad with the Comets. He had a .908 save percentage in 36 full games in his first pro year, but his 2020-2021 was very, very difficult. He only had 4 games played, a .252 goals against and a .916 save percentage. He went 3-1-0, but the fact is he only played those 4 games for the entire season. Now, this was mostly because in 2020-2021, you had yourselves the taxi squad, and it was the North Division, and DiPietro was on the Canucks taxi squad as an extra guy that just didn't really get any playing time. And you could really say that the Vancouver Canucks messed up his development in more ways than one by pretty much giving him a year off, only doing practices and only playing 4 AHL caliber games in the entire season. This year, though, heading back over to Abbotsford because the Canucks farm team was now local. He had 34 games played. He split the load with Spencer Martin. He was the inferior goaltender amongst the two, and you could even debate that Artur Silovs was also a guy that was sort of exhibiting a bit more potential heading into the next few seasons than DiPietro. This is why we had ourselves an update from Rick Dhaliwal earlier this month, talking about how the agent for DiPietro, Darren Ferris, has been given permission from the Canucks to talk to other teams and help facilitate a trade. Now, that's not a brand new idea that we have yet to be exposed to. That's happened a few times over the past few years, where a player really does want out, or the player and his agent really want out, and the team is like, hey, we can't really get a trade done. Agent, how about you go out there and you talk to other teams and convince them to take on your client so we can actually make a trade. Sound good? Because this is the case, it means that Michael DiPietro's name is going to be tough to move, and even though we had rumors saying that the Montreal Canadiens might actually be interested in this type of player, long story short, there just hasn't been a trade done just yet, so at least at the time of recording this audio, there has not been a trade done just yet, so there still is a lot more opportunity for conversations to happen with other teams, so we'll see where those talks go from there. However, Darren Ferris, the agent for DiPietro, has not just been given permission to do this. There also was an interview that he did with Ben Kuzma of the Province, going over some quotes as to how he feels the Vancouver Canucks handled DiPietro's deployment and his progression over the years. Take a look at this article from yesterday on The Province. The link will be in the description if you want to go ahead and read it. Michael DiPietro's agent believes that the club dropped the ball on his client's development. The quote in the headline says, "A lot of players wouldn't even be able to endure the lack of attention that maybe the organization had given to him," DiPietro's agent Darren Ferris ended up saying. The article opens up by talking about Ilya Mikheyev, the newest Vancouver Canucks free agent signee, and how he'll be wearing number 65 this season with the Canucks. Now, this is not surprising because Mikheyev wore 65 with Toronto, he wore 66 in the KHL, but it's interesting with Vancouver because Michael DiPietro had already had that 65 number with the main squad and in the Abbotsford Canucks system too. The article opens up by saying that DiPietro was now going to have a different number, as well as glossing over the unfortunate truth that DiPietro has indeed worked himself down in a pretty crowded crease for the Vancouver Canucks. The sobering realization is that lining up behind Demko, Martin, Colin Delia, and Artur Silovs means that there is a chance of recharging his career, and that won't be easy. NHL teams invest heavily in drafting and developing young goaltenders, especially in a position that's in constant technical change, and there's not much roster movement in the minors either. There hasn't been too much movement in the offseason in terms of an opportunity, but once we get through that period, it should be easier, DiPietro's agent Darren Ferris told Post Media News. I think right now, we have a shortage of good goalies in Michael's ilk in the market, and he probably needs a new start. Now, what the heck does that mean? It means that he's saying there are not really too many good goaltenders that are like Michael DiPietro. You know, they're smaller, they're a little bit more agile and athletic. Whenever you have a change in the organization from management down, sometimes they look at who the other guys picked, and that's a tough position to be in. Ben Kuzma then writes about the idea of how the Vancouver Canucks might actually have a few other options should they not accomplish a trade straight up for DiPietro. If a singular or package deal trade isn't completed by the fall, then what? Would the Canucks loan DiPietro to a European team to keep him playing as insurance against injury? They did qualify him, and he has a one-year contract that pays $840,000 at the NHL level and just $70,000 in the AHL. This is what the agent says again. Realistically, it's stay the course until we're able to find another team with an opportunity. That may come up prior to the season with a team that's not happy with the decision it has made, so there are a lot of variables here. Montreal is an option because we did talk about them before, but of course things have to work in both sides in order for a trade to facilitate. Europe is always a possibility too, but they're also pretty full over there with the commitments they have, and with KHL teams and the war going on in Ukraine, they've lended their players to other parts of Europe to keep playing. And so with all things considered, it's pretty apparent right now that Michael DiPietro's future, not just with the Vancouver Canucks, but in hockey in general, isn't really all too guaranteed. In Vancouver, he's technically, fifth on the depth chart because you have Martin, Demko as the NHL guys, and you have Silovs and Delia who are your AHL guys. DiPietro seems to be the de facto third-string goalie in the AHL, and now you have a European scene that doesn't really have too many openings either. It's going to be tough for Ferris and his client to go out there and find themselves a home. He is such a super kid, stressed Ferris. He's really mature and a very special person and has handled everything quite well. A lot of players wouldn't even be able to endure the lack of attention that maybe the organization had given to him. There are occasions where they've dropped the ball in his development. The truth of the matter is that the bulk is more on the organization than it is on the player in this instance. Hopefully, we can get him in the right position. Now, I'm going to go out there and say it right here. I definitely do think that the Vancouver Canucks did indeed goof up the development of DiPietro here, mostly due to that 2020-2021 season where he was just a taxi squad relief guy that was only playing 4 games on the year and getting a whole bunch of practices in with the Vancouver Canucks. You see that big 0 right beside Vancouver Canucks in 2020-2021? It means he was on the team, he just didn't play anything. Because the way the Canadian division was working out, plus the restrictions with traveling and the pandemic and everything, it was just so unfortunate for everybody involved. But for a younger 20-year-old, 21, 22-year-old goaltender in Michael DiPietro that was pretty much in the prime development parts of his career, it was even worse. Now, obviously, the ones that screwed up that part of his development, that's not Alvin and Rutherford, they weren't here yet, but now that you have this new regime in, you signed Colin Delia to be a backup-ish caliber AHL guy, and things aren't really looking all too secure for a guy in DiPietro whom a lot of Canucks fans were super excited about back when he was drafted in 2017, and after they saw what he was able to do in the OHL in the years that followed. This situation is obviously super unfortunate, and you don't want to see anybody go through a flawed development path like DiPietro had, but all in all, this is what happened, and this is the situation we have to live with now. So for DiPietro, hopefully he's able to find himself an NHL career sometime soon. And heck, even if that's not an NHL career, hopefully that's a solidified AHL one-way contract where he's making 6 digits and he actually has himself security financially. Heck, even if that comes in Europe, then hey, that would be actually pretty good for him too. So all in all, I've always been a fan of Michael DiPietro and the story that he has had. It's just really unfortunate to see how he's been developed. It's just now Spencer Martin performed better than DiPietro at the AHL level in Abbotsford, so maybe that's just the result of having a full year of development taken away from you and spent just only doing practices and not really playing any games. So talk to me in the comments your thoughts about the unfortunate Michael DiPietro situation here. Link will be in the description if you want to go ahead and read the Ben Kuzma article with the Darren Ferris quotes. Where do you want to see Michael DiPietro end up next? If you're a Montreal Canadiens fan, then what are your thoughts on this entire idea? Because we did make a video earlier in the week, in the month, discussing this player heading over to your squad. I hope you enjoyed this video, and Bye.